go ahead and get started. Hello and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 2021 Women in Clean Energy Conference. We are so excited to have you with us here today, and thank you so much for joining. This is our second year of hosting an all virtual conference, but I think it has really helped us open up opportunities for our audience and invite speakers from around the country. My name is Brianna Dooley, and I will be moderating tonight's session. I'm a recent and proud University of Dayton alumna, and I am now pursuing my Master's of Energy Systems at the University of California, Davis, where I am joining you from today. I have had the pleasure of working with an amazing team of women to plan a great conference for you this week, and I hope you find value in the topics and resources we have planned for you. Tonight's session will focus on women at the cutting edge of their field, and we'll discuss their roles in solar, wind, and battery technologies. We invite all attendees to submit questions through the Q&A feature during the session, and questions will be addressed at the conclusion of all of the presentations. I would like to let you know that today's presentation will be recorded and will be posted on our website within a few weeks. Our first speaker tonight is Kerri Devine, Director of Engineering at Arcadia. Kerri oversees a team of 25 software engineers developing the nation's largest community solar platform and other innovative products at Arcadia. Previously, Kerri spent 7 years with Siemens Smart Infrastructure developing smart building products. It is my pleasure to introduce Kerri Devine.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction, Brianna. I am thrilled to be here. It is my distinct pleasure to represent Arcadia. I am the Director of Engineering there. We are a climate crisis fighting tech company based in DC. Let me go ahead and click to the next slide. There we go. Today, we'll be talking about community solar, which is one of Arcadia's core product offerings. I'll be talking through its role in making 100% clean energy accessible to all. Before we jump in though, I figured I should introduce a little bit about my background. So my journey into clean energy actually probably started well before even what these slides show. I've always been really interested in the environment, really interested in extreme weather events. And so I went to college knowing that this is a space I wanted to be in. I studied electrical and computer engineering in undergrad and computer science with a specialty in energy and the environment. And so my first job out of school was working for Siemens, which is a large German industrial company with over 400,000 people. My specific role there was writing software to help really large buildings manage their energy consumption. I really enjoyed the role. I had a lot of fun learning how large buildings manage their energy bills. But I ultimately started to feel like a lot of the work was really just to help these large buildings reduce their energy bills, and saving energy was just a nice side effect. So I started researching other companies out there working directly in the climate space, and I came across Arcadia, which is a 200-person, roughly sized startup in DC, working on creating better energy experiences for consumers. Around the same time, I also was connected with the Clean Energy Leadership Institute, and I did their fellowship program last year. I can't recommend it highly enough. It was a great opportunity to learn about the different technologies, the policy, the financial models, all of the things that are coming together to ensure that we are mitigating climate change. Okay, so back to our regularly scheduled programming. Rooftop solar is not an option for most. Most Americans, well, actually about 2/3 of Americans own their own home. Of those homeowners, only about 700 plus have a credit score over 700, which is a problem because in order to, lease solar panels or to get a loan to buy your own solar panels, a lot of companies require a really high credit score. And then, assuming you have a high credit score, there's still not even 100% of homes that have a roof that is compatible with solar panels. So in raw numbers, that means just about 43 million out of the nearly 130 million homes in the US can actually take advantage of rooftop solar. As a company committed to building a 100% renewable energy future, greater access to solar energy is a critical component to curbing carbon emissions. So what do? Enter community solar. The formal definition of community solar is here. It's a utility billing mechanism through which many utility customers can participate in a single shared solar energy system and receive solar energy credits directly back on their individual utility bills. You may be wondering, how does this work in practice? I too had that question. So let's walk through it in a little bit more detail. There's no one-size-fits-all approach because of varying laws, regulations, business models, but I'll speak to a simplified overview of how Arcadia's programs work specifically. So to start with, a project developer will come in and build the solar project. Typically, these projects will be on the roof of maybe a school, a brewery, or maybe on some land that a farmer wants to lease out. The developer or another organization will then contract Arcadia to manage subscriptions. Arcadia is responsible for finding and enrolling subscribers in the community onto those projects, whether they be homeowners, renters, even small businesses. We determine their allocation for the project, and once that project turns on and starts generating electricity, the project or the electricity will flow to the local grid. The local utility will ultimately still be responsible for delivering electricity back to the end subscriber. They will also then credit their utility bill in exchange for the electricity generated by their share of the solar project. On a monthly basis, Arcadia will charge the subscribers for their subscription and then pay back both the utility and the project. We also ensure that the utility has accurately applied credits, and then on a regular basis, we update the subscription sizes for subscribers. Since your electricity consumption might change over time, the project's generation may change over time based on seasonality, age, things like that. In essence, Arcadia is managing virtual subscriptions for neighbors on a local solar project. The benefits of community solar, I've listed a few here. It truly does make clean energy an option for all, regardless of home ownership status, roof compatibility, wealth, credit score, as I mentioned in the beginning. It also just expands the deployment of renewable energy, reducing emissions, accelerating the transition away from fossil fuels. On the third point, injecting investment into the local economy, I wanted to share a few stats. So the Pennsylvania Farm Bureau is one of two organizations leading the Pennsylvania Community Solar Economic Alliance, which is the leading voice trying to pass community solar in Pennsylvania. They're committed to the effort because they see solar energy as a lifeline to struggling farms in the region. Dairy farmers have been struggling with low milk prices, and they often have pasture land that isn't valuable for other uses. And they can earn as much as $1,000 per acre each year by leasing part of their land to a community solar project. Community solar projects are also often frequently located in economically distressed areas. For example, of the 185 projects that Arcadia manages, about 22% are located in qualified opportunity zones. And that represents hundreds of millions of dollars of investment in the areas that need it most across the country. In addition, a 2020 study from Penn State found that deploying community solar across Pennsylvania would create more than 11,000 jobs, including almost 6,000 in construction, interconnection, and advertising work. These same projects would employ hundreds of people on an ongoing basis for operations, maintenance, and related work. And then finally, community solar creates local power projects that increase regional grid resiliency. So I'm sure many of you have been following the news. If you remember the news in Texas, when ERCOT had power spikes, things were going off the grid. When there are hurricanes, it's really important that there's local power generation that can spin up quickly. And so that's one of the benefits of community solar. These projects have saved customers money, made the grid greener, and created hundreds of local jobs. Arcadia today is the largest manager of community solar nationwide, with 185 projects across 8 states with 65,000 subscribers to date. One of the metrics I'm most proud of, though, is this 870,000 metric tons of lifetime carbon savings from those projects installed so far through 2020. Community solar exists today in only about a third of the country's states. Several states have active legislation considering it. We actually just helped to pass legislation in New Mexico, and there are active bills in places like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. There's also a national legislation up for debate requiring all states to consider community solar programs. Community solar could expand by nearly 100x by 2030, which is absolutely critical to meet our ambitious climate change goals. I'll end there. I do want to leave you on the note that community solar is just one innovation that Arcadia offers to energy consumers. Utilities generally haven't evolved in their 120-year existence. They are generally regulated monopolies. And so there is a lot of innovation to be done in the electric space. And so I personally am very optimistic about the future, and I encourage that if you are also excited about the potential for innovation here to join the action. So I will turn it back over to you, Brianna. Thanks.
Thank you, Kerri. That was really, really awesome. I really appreciate your insight, and community solar is very exciting. And let's see here. I would now like to introduce our second speaker for tonight, Yong, Director of Wind Independent Engineering at DNV. Ju conducts technical due diligence for wind projects in support of construction, loans, and tax equity for North American clients. Ju also has extensive experience as an energy engineer, working with efficiency program design and implementation for public utilities. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Yong.
Thank you, Brianna, for the introduction. Next slide, please. All right. Hello, good evening, everybody. My name is Yong, as Brianna introduced me, and I'm currently the Director of Wind Independent Engineering at DNV. I have a Bachelor of Science and Master of Science degree in Industrial Engineering from Oklahoma State. As Brianna pointed out, I started my career as an energy engineer. We focus on the implementation of commercial industrial energy efficiency program for various electric utilities across the United States. 6 years ago, I transitioned from primary energy efficiency implementation program work to renewables within DNV, specifically to take on a project manager role within the Wind Independent Engineering Group. In my current role as the Director of Wind IE, I manage a team of 10 project managers and project engineers who can coordinate and conduct technical due diligence for wind projects to support construction loan, debt, and tax equity financing for clients in the US and the Canadian markets. A little bit about DNV. DNV is an independent expert in assurance and risk management, driven by our purpose to safeguard life, property, and the environment. We empower our customers and their stakeholders with facts and reliable insights so that critical decisions can be made with confidence. And as a trusted voice for many of the world's organizations, we use our knowledge to advance safety and performance, set industry benchmarks, and inspire and invent solutions to tackle global transformation. For the past 5 years, DNV has published the annual Energy Transition Outlook based on DNV's independent model of the world energy systems to 2050. DNV has produced a global energy transition outlook along with regional energy transitions that include inter-regional energy relationships. In this outlook, we have divided the world into 10 regions. Countries included in each of the regions generally share some energy or geographical characteristics. And the purpose of the Energy Transition Outlook is to provide strategic insights for companies, analysts, and decision makers on the nature and pace of regional energy transitions. Let's take a look at the North America's energy transition in this presentation. This slide gives you a snapshot of the population, energy use, and GDP for both the United States and Canada in 2019 versus 2050. In the US, the current administration has prioritized tackling climate change and has rejoined the Paris Agreement with targets for an emissions-free power sector by 2035, which is about 50 to 52% emissions reduction below 2005 levels by 2030, and a net zero emission economy-wide by 2050. 2020 was the record year for installation of wind and solar projects with 16.9 gigawatt of wind and 19.2 gigawatt of solar installed capacities in the US. Despite the COVID-19 pandemic, wind, solar, and storage markets boomed within the bullish renewables market atmosphere. And the private sector is also making commitments to new electric vehicles and renewable energy. Canada has also set targets of 40 to 45% emissions reduction below 2005 levels, which is up from the previous 30% target, and has established a legally binding ambition for net zero emissions by 2050. The federal government there in Canada has the right to implement its economy-wide carbon pricing requirement and is set to increase carbon pricing to 50 Canadian dollars by 2022. A few pointers to the future on the US energy transition landscape. The Biden administration's Build Back Better agenda, passing the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan in March. Also a bipartisan infrastructure bill of $1 trillion over 10 years, passing mid-August this year. The Build Back Better plan will escalate modernization and clean energy in transportation, power, and buildings. It promotes jobs, domestic supply chains, and advancing clean energy generation through extending the investment tax credit qualification until 2025 for offshore wind development in the US, start of construction deadlines extension for onshore wind and solar technologies, retrofitting buildings to meet the highest energy efficiency standards, and American-made electric vehicles, with the targets of half of new vehicle sales will be EVs by 2030. Another focus area or ambition of the plan is investing in climate R&D for breakthroughs in clean technology, including spending of $2.5 billion a year through 2026 for carbon capture, utilization, and storage, or CCUS developments, and hydrogen commercialization, while focused on knowledge gaps in distribution and transmission of hydrogen blended gas to utilities and consumers. In Canada, their carbon capture and sequestration, or CCS leadership, is expected with major project scope to reduce carbon dioxide emissions, totaling 6.4 million tons per year by 2030. There's also a proposed clean fuel regulations in Canada requiring liquid fossil fuel primary suppliers to reduce the carbon intensity of fuels produced in or imported into Canada. Final energy demand. The North America's final energy demand has been flat for 2 decades and will decline in the coming years. The transport sector's lower energy demand is the main reason for this development. Electrification of the road vehicle fleet will contribute to transport energy consumption being cut by 60%. In itself will be responsible for the entire fall in the region's energy demand to 70% of the current level. Energy demand in buildings will decline slightly over the forecast period, with counteracting forces of an increase in residential space by 25% and commercial by 40%, and improve energy efficiency afforded in particular by electrification and heat pumps. Despite increased energy efficiency, though, a North American industrial revival will counteract these effects. With an over 50% lift in manufactured goods, energy demand from manufacturing will increase slightly towards 2050. The share of electricity in the final energy demand mix will double between 2019 and 2050, reaching over 40%, which is similar to developments in Europe and OECD Pacific. Variable renewables come to dominate power mix, where solar power and wind with a 69% combined share in 2050. Grid infrastructure will need significant improvements with storage, connectivity, and demand response, which are key to integrate variable renewables. Electrification of transport will be the strongest driver of the reduction in oil consumption over the forecast period. Natural gas overtook oil as the region's largest primary energy source in 2018 and will consolidate that position over the coming decades with a share of 30% in 2050. Coal will continue its rapid decline, already outcompeted in the power sector, by cheap natural gas and increasingly by variable renewables. As electricity use expands and renewables become cheaper, wind and solar will see their energy supply grow tenfold and 16-fold respectively to 2050. By then, onshore and offshore wind will generate more electricity than natural gas. Electrification is by far the most dynamic element of the energy transition. The share of electricity in final global energy demand is set to double from 19 to 38% within the next 30 years. Solar PV and wind are already the cheapest form of new power almost everywhere, and within a decade will also be cheaper than operating existing thermal power in most places. Specifically for electricity generated from wind energy, we see that as wind capacity expands, new wind regimes will be exploited. New turbine types will allow better performance under varying wind conditions, and such developments, along with continued increase in turbine, blade, and tower sizes, will lead to improvements in the capacity factors, bringing the world average for onshore wind turbines to 31% by 2050. It is also likely that wind farms complete their lifetimes will be repowered with new wind turbines that reflect state-of-the-art technology. This is already happening with so many existing wind farms in the US being repowered even before the end of their technical lifetimes to take advantage of favorable financial conditions. To enable a successful energy transition, DNV has included financing the energy transition as part of 2021's Energy Transition Outlook, where significant takeaways are provided for financiers, investors, government regulators, corporate energy buyers, developers, and owners, and electric utilities. The next several slides are included for reference. I would like to note that the slides that I had shared this evening only illustrate the very high-level summary of DNV's 2021 energy transition outlook for North America. In the interest of transparency, I invite you to download the suites of publications available on our website at eto.dnv.com for the full and complete information on DNV's energy transition outlook. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present to you this evening.
Thank you, Ju. It's a lot of really great information about the market and where the US is going. So I really appreciate that. I would now like to introduce our third speaker, Meredith Isom, project engineer at Romeo Power. Meredith manages projects ranging from battery pack prototyping to destructive and non-destructive testing. She also acts as a liaison between engineering teams and is passionate about increasing the accessibility to sustainable electrification solutions. It's my pleasure to introduce Meredith Isom.
All right, thank you so much for that introduction. I think I'm trying to find my presentation. Hold on one second. Oh, there we go, perfect. All right, thank you so much again for that presentation. Today, I will be talking about battery technology and the electrification of the commercial vehicle sector. So just to give a little bit of background about myself, my name is Meredith Isom. I am 24 years old. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee, and I'm currently working at Romeo Power Technology in Vernon, California. I graduated from Howard University in 2019 with a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering, and I am now working as a project engineer on the advanced concepts and battery safety teams at Romeo Power. So the battery safety team is responsible for destructive and non-destructive testing of battery packs, while the advanced concepts team is responsible for creating prototype battery packs for end customers with the goal of moving that design into production. So my day-to-day primarily involves a lot of project management work. I'm responsible for communicating with customers, projecting project timelines, and just making sure everyone's in line to meet our deliverable deadlines. I think it's a pretty unique position as well. Most people are only involved in programs for one specific point, whether that's design, validation, systems level things, and I get to see the entire program from start to finish, which is pretty special. So who we are and what we do. So Romeo Power was founded in 2016, and we are responsible for delivering large-scale electrification solutions for complex commercial vehicle applications. Our mission is to power the world's transition to electrification, and our vision is to create a world where energy poverty no longer exists, with our first step, of course, being in the commercial vehicle sector. So I thought it would be helpful to give a little bit of background about what I'm talking about when I refer to the battery packs, because I know it can sound pretty complex. I wish I had these amazing graphics when I first joined at Romeo. I really gained my knowledge of our product by walking through the production line and just studying the CAD designs that my team created. So we basically start with lithium-ion cells, which are then packaged into what we call a battery module. And then those battery modules are then packaged into what we call an enclosure or a battery pack. And then that pack is mounted or integrated onto the vehicle. So when talking about the electrification of the commercial vehicle industry, it's really important to talk about where we are right now. So the current commercial vehicle industry, as many of you know, is primarily consists of vehicles that are powered by diesel and gasoline. Diesel and gasoline are fossil fuels. So when we burn them, it releases carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas that causes a buildup of greenhouse gases in the Earth's atmosphere, which causes the Earth to warm, and unfortunately results in the climate change that we see today. Things like the snowstorms in Texas and the flooding and tornadoes in Jersey, wildfires out in California. It's very clear that we are in the middle of a climate crisis. So transportation alone contributes to about 29% of total US greenhouse gas emissions, which also makes the US the largest contributor of greenhouse gases. So the environmental impacts of the current commercial vehicle industry is an important factor when powering this quest for electrification. However, electrification of the current commercial vehicle industry is no easy feat. There are an array of challenges that we face when it comes to electrification. However, I will touch on those that I see in my role as a project engineer at Romeo Power Technology. So the first thing is a timeline. So I don't even know how to go backwards, but I'll just keep going. So the first thing is a timeline. California has mandated that Thank you. California has mandated that all commercial trucks are to be electrical vehicles by 2024. So thus the timeline or the years of research and development it usually takes for these battery packs to go from a prototype to production ready are no longer feasible. The second issue is accessibility. There are a wide range of commercial vehicle applications with varying power requirements, different utilizations in different climates. And unfortunately, there's not really a one-size-fits-all for battery packs. So we really had to figure out how to create batteries that will work for each different application. And the last issue that comes to mind are design challenges, things like safety assurance, thermal management, and again, making sure that we can design to meet the different applications needed by the customer. So throughout this presentation, I'm going to explain how Romeo Power plans to mitigate these challenges when it comes to electrification. So essentially what sets Romeo Power apart and allows us to have a hand in electrifying the commercial vehicle sector is our configurable pack technology. Our architecture allows for flexibility in our series and parallel counts at the module level and the pack level. That way, when we're designing the batteries, we can tailor them specifically to the needs of the end customers. For example, we have something like, 24S, 24P modules, that is 24 cells in series, 24 cells in parallel. We can also have 32S, 18P modules, 32 cells in series, 18 in parallel. And then when we move up to the pack level, we also have flexibility in how the modules are packaged. We could have a 1S, 1P pack, which is just a single module, or we can also have a 6S, 1P pack, which is 6 modules in series, 1 module in parallel. So through this design, we are able to meet our target of flexibility. That, along with our thermal management system and lightweight design, allows us to deliver superior gravimetric energy density. Gravimetric energy density is how much energy a system contains in comparison to its mass. So our packs have up to 30% more energy density than our same size competitor packs. So overall, this approach to battery technology allows us to meet the demand of different commercial vehicle applications without needing the additional months and years of research and development. And we're also able to meet design targets of high energy density and some safety assurance with a superior thermal management system. So the pack, or our product itself, really is what allows us to tackle all these 3 challenges when it comes to electrification. So I wanted to give a more specific example of kind of like an off-the-shelf battery pack that we have at Romeo Power, which is our Orion Pack family. And as you can see, this pack works with different commercial vehicle applications such as medium short-haul trucks, specialty trucks, or even school buses that you will see on the road. And I also think that this is a great visual to explain how different the packs can look depending on the module configuration in terms of size. So quality and safety assurance are 2 concepts that are constantly in the back of our minds when designing for different programs. Early on in the design phase, we have key stakeholders from the cell science, design, battery safety, systems, and thermal teams involved in the design so we can assure high quality and a safe design. And I will speak on my experience specifically with working on the battery safety team. When I joined Romeo, I really was surprised at how much they are involved in the design, even before the design begins. So before we even have a customer, the battery safety team collaborates with our cell science team when vetting top-tier cell suppliers. we're responsible for all initial validations and just make sure we're communicating our standards of safety. After the design, the packs undergo extensive validation by our systems teams and our battery safety teams at the cell, cluster, module, and pack level to ensure that we're meeting our core values in our product. We also have a baseline level of validation that is done on every pack, and the validation can also change depending on the vehicle application. So for example, if we have an off-road vehicle that's going to be in extremely rough terrain and a humid climate, the validation plan is likely going to be different than, say, a school bus that's going to be in dry, hot Southern California. So just remaining in tune with this idea of flexibility allows us to meet the demand of the different commercial vehicle applications that exist. And we're able to rise to the challenge of safety assurance in our designs as well. So this presentation is really just a high-level roadmap on how Romeo Power plans on electrifying the commercial vehicle sector. This is an important first step, not only in transitioning to cleaner energy, but also in increasing the accessibility of electrification as well. So thank you, that's it.
Thank you so much, Meredith. That was really awesome. Batteries can be super complicated, and I think that was a really good way of sort of boiling the information down for the attendees today. And thank you to all speakers for providing like really amazing and inspirational insight into your work. And thank you for all that you're doing to contribute to this field. I think it's super exciting, and I think the attendees, I'll speak on behalf of them, but I think they enjoy it as well. So I would now like to invite all of the speakers back on video for the Q&A portion. We have plenty of time today, so we will be going through that right now. All right, so the first question that came in is, I believe, directed towards Kerri. So in terms of community solar, this question was, do subscribers to community solar get only generation cost credit or behind the meter credit?
Great question. So it depends honestly on the program rules state by state, but for most subscribers, they're getting credit for what's been generated by the project.
Awesome, thank you. Another question came in for Meredith. Is California going to meet its goal of an electric commercial vehicle fleet by 2024? That might be a opinion question, but
yeah, it sounds like one. I think that it's absolutely a possibility if we really have all hands on deck and have the support that we need, not only on the company side, but with different resources. So I think it's definitely a possibility. It's what we're working towards, but and it's opinion based as well. But I do think it's possible.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Another question for Kerri. How do you think community solar technology will evolve over the next 5 to 10 years? So I guess to add on to that myself, there are some other companies and startups out there working on this. And kind of what do you see from maybe the Arcadia perspective and just what you know about the market and how that will grow? It sounds like maybe it'll be more on the tech side than the actual, and the solar tech, like actual technology side.
Yeah, great question. So I think the evolution and innovation in community solar is not actually going to happen on the solar panel hardware side itself. Most of the innovation is actually going to come in program rule development and then also in the software subscription management side. So for example, at Arcadia, what we've done is we've pioneered a no credit check model for subscribing members, where we can actually prove to regulators and to projects that our members are paying their utility bills on time by integrating with their utilities, pulling down the data, being able to identify, you know, look, they've paid their electric bills on time for the last 2 years. We don't need to submit members to a credit check because we know that credit checks come from a honestly racist and classist system, and so we don't need credit checks for people to subscribe to community solar. So that's one of the types of innovations that we've been pioneering. There's a lot of other work that people are doing in this space. For example, being able to expand community solar to people that might need support with their energy bills, right? So how can we connect people that might have come from low income backgrounds? So we've partnered with the New York City Housing Authority, for example, to install solar panels on the roofs of some of their apartment buildings, and then being able to directly share the savings back with all of the community members directly living in that building. So that's the type of innovation that I think is going to drive the adoption of community solar nationwide. It's not necessarily about the solar panels. I think solar panels already have come a long way in the last 20 years.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. That was a great answer. So next question I have is for Ju. Could you maybe talk a little bit about onshore versus offshore wind? It's okay if you don't have stats on that, I think, but maybe just what you've seen, what maybe DNV is working on now, and where each of those are going.
Sure. Most of the projects I'm involved in, it's primarily on the onshore wind. So, you know, like rural farms where you see a lot of wind turbines erected. So that's my primary project, but we do have a section of dedicated offshore wind group. It does a lot of front end support for developers and financiers on offshore wind. Two of the big offshore wind projects are underway, and we recently heard good news about that. I hope that answers your question. I'm a little bit remote from offshore wind, closer to offshore wind projects.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. All right. Okay, we've got questions coming in, so that's great. Next question, I think, is also for Kerri. So what are the known environmental negatives to solar power energy?
Sure. So I can name a few that I am aware of. I know a lot of environmentalists flag often that there's habitat loss when we're installing, utility scale solar, where it might be clearing some forestry to make room for solar panels. But a lot of times that's why you'll see solar in places like desert land where there isn't much natural wildlife. There's also a great research showing how solar farms can actually be really co-beneficial to wildlife and bees in particular. I'm sure a lot of us have heard about, save the bees, but so when people plant wildflowers around solar panels, bees also really enjoy that, and so that helps mitigate the impact of any habitat loss. People have also flagged just general alteration of land use when it's not necessarily being used for its original purpose, and now it's being repurposed to host solar panels. And that's why community solar is really great, because it has a much smaller footprint than utility scale solar. Other potential environmental things, just the mining of the materials themselves to make the solar panels is another big thing that's been flagged. There's been a lot of research done in this space. Another thing I've heard is some of the just general over penetration of solar in some states. So for often days in places like California, when there's too much solar on the grid, oftentimes then we need to kind of spin up dirty peaker plants like natural gas if suddenly it becomes cloudy, and so that can have an adverse impact. So those are some things that I've heard of, but again, I continue to be bullish that I think solar is great, especially when paired with things like battery technology that Meredith is chatting about.
Awesome, thank you, Kerri. Let's see, the next question in the Q&A for Meredith. Question is, are the Romeo Power EV batteries / packs going to be used to convert vehicles that are already on the road using gas and diesel, or just the new market vehicles?
To my understanding, I believe it's new market vehicles. To my knowledge, I do not know if they're going to be used for vehicles that are previously used using gas or powered using gas.
Okay, awesome. Next question is actually for all panelists, so maybe we can start with Kerri and kind of just go in order, then Ju, then Meredith. So the question for all panelists: how does clean energy reach all people best? What processes ensure inclusive benefit and participation. So this could maybe keep it kind of direct to your topic today, but you're welcome to speak on others as well.
Sure, yeah, I really love this question. I think we are at such a transition point for our energy systems, and we have a chance to remake the systems to be inclusive for all. And so I mentioned before kind of how community solar is empowering access for low, moderate income families, for people that might not have great credit scores. And so that's one model in particular that I'm really excited about, but also just that you don't need to own a home in order to support clean energy. And so that's something that I think is really important.
That's a very good response, Kerri. I think to faster electrify through power generation from wind and solar, so that your greater mix of electricity is coming from variable renewable source. In my mind, that's the greatest way to reach wider group of folks to be more inclusive. But I think it's also important to think about from the standpoint of hiring workforce, right? We want to make sure that our workforce in the green economy, renewable energy, are diverse folks. Increase the diversity in green economy is equally important.
And if we're talking about clean energy, reaching all people, I'm thinking about in the scope of my company and what we do. I'm thinking about accessibility and probably financial accessibility, and that's something that's probably will be more so explored on the production side, ensuring that we're using products or parts and pieces that are cost efficient, so we aren't having to sell battery packs that are excessively expensive and not financially accessible to certain groups of people. But I also know that this question might not pose perfectly for the specific industry I'm talking about, because we're battery manufacturers usually for other companies and not necessarily individuals.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you all. Those were great answers. That's a very complicated question that has been a hot topic for a while within this industry. And I'll talk about this again when we're done with questions, but we do have 2 more sessions this week focusing on regulation and policy, and then social justice and clean energy, which will have speakers talking about that question specifically. So make sure you sign up if you would like to attend. And another question for Meredith, in the commercial vehicle market, which class of vehicles appear to be leading in interest for electrification, and maybe what are some obstacles?
Yeah, so since I work on the R&D side, I work with direct customers for prototype packs. I think for classes of vehicles that are leading interest in electrification, that would probably be more so on the production side. Those are like the long haul trucks and things like that. But I think from the R&D side, the customers that we've been getting recently, it seems like the interest is more so in specialty vehicles.
Awesome, thank you. Let's see. So question for Ju about the DNV report. Could you maybe talk about, are there any examples, I guess, you can give on how that report has influenced certain policy, whether that's within the US, like for example, I know the UN publishes reports every year, so does the EIA and IRENA, and sometimes it's kind of hard to see what impact those are or they're giving. So if you have any thoughts on that.
I can't name one policy that's impacted from the energy transition report that we have, but I know that we do have group that work closely with policymakers. But we are using this energy transition outlook to talk to our clients and helping them to make decisions in the investment. And a lot of these developers also have regulatory arms. So we hope that this report also plays a role in that, influencing how they see the transition and how to influence policymaker. I highly recommend that if you guys are interested, download a copy of the full reports. There's a lot of information in there. There's a lot of graphs and charts. I try to make it interesting, but there's just a lot of information. But we also in October going to release a pathway to net zero emissions report. So I'm looking forward to read that. So please be on the lookout for that as well.
Awesome. Yeah, and Ju, if you have a second, would you be able to put maybe the link to that site to download in the chat just for the attendees? Thank you. And we have another question come in for Kerri. It looks like, is there any seasonal energy savings techniques for solar energy? As we know, the sun peak hours and intensity of solar radiations is max peak during the summer, but mid during the winter, so we can store solar energy during the summer and we can use it during the winter.
Yeah, so I think if I'm understanding the question correctly, it's kind of like, how do we balance for seasonality in the solar space? I think storage is a great answer, but also I think increasingly whatever we can do to shift, if you've heard of the duck curve, it's this idea that like how we use energy throughout the day as consumers, and it makes it really hard to plan for energy consumption and generation. How do we balance that on the grid? And so generally what we want to do is try to flatten that curve so that throughout the day we have a stable demand for energy. And by being able to do that, we can better plan for how much solar, how much wind we need on the grid, can have the right amount of storage to be able to accommodate and be able to have smart devices that can shift when they're using energy, right? So maybe if we know we want to do a bunch of energy intensive things at one time of year, we could plan to do that closer to the summer when there's more renewable energy generation.
Awesome. Yeah. So I did just put the link to the DMV website in the chat, so please visit that if you'd like to download. I highly recommend. I did it last time I talked to Ju, and very extensive and a lot of information in there. So the next thing I'd like to do, and what we usually try to ask speakers, is we've been focusing a lot on the technical, and so maybe transitioning into some question and answers about career outlook. So first question I have for all of you today is, are there any like specific hurdles that you came across in your early career and young career that was a barrier you had to overcome to pursue your passion in clean energy? And we can start with Kerri.
Sure. Yeah. So honestly, for me, I think it was honestly just knowing where to look. So my background was much more focused on the software side, and I didn't know what companies were out there. I was graduating in 2013 and thought, most of the work was maybe just in hardware. And so I knew I didn't actually want to be in the electrical space. I didn't want to be working on solar panels or wind turbines or batteries. And so I thought, okay, what software jobs are out there? I found Siemens working in energy efficiency, and it was great. I learned a ton about that space. I still think that the electrification of buildings is very, very important in the decarbonization effort. Since buildings do use about 40% of electricity in the US. But so that said, I think knowing where to look if you want to be working in the clean energy space is really important. There are now a ton of resources out there. I always like to tell people to just follow a bunch of like venture capital firms that are investing in companies in this space, just to kind of get a good sense of what companies are out there working on this. So regardless of your skill and background, so if you're more technical or in policy, if you're in software or hardware, there's definitely a spot for you to lean in and learn more about how to contribute in the space.
Thank you, Kerri. And we'll go over to Ju.
Thank you. I think I started my career more in a more traditional sense in the energy efficiency / renewable world. So I started, Brianna, you probably are familiar with this Industrial Assessment Center. I think UD has a program. So at Oklahoma State University, we also have an IAC. So I started as a research assistant in my graduate study, doing energy audits and stuff. And that kind of, it's the launch pad for my career, I guess. I started my as an energy engineer, and then learn about the various offering within DNV. I've been with the DNV since I graduated from my master's program. So I've been with the company for many years. So I have the opportunity to try different, groups within DNV to just learn the various side of, renewable energy efficiency work. But I think for students looking to venture into this field, try out internships. I think that's really important. And even a volunteer in an organization like Kerri's, maybe if you guys have some form of volunteer program, that could be useful and, provide a lot of learning opportunity.
Awesome. Thanks, Ju. And Meredith?
Yeah, so I'm still definitely very much in the beginning of my career as an engineer. I literally graduated in 2019. And I think the biggest hurdle for me was finding comfortability with what I do know and what I do not know and being able to communicate that. And having the confidence to do that, because it really does take confidence. There's nothing that makes anyone inherently more suited to a specific technical position. The difference between where you are and where they are is foundational knowledge. And I think that if you have the confidence to say what you don't know and ask and learn, then you can really move into whatever industry or field you want to, even outside of engineering. I came into Romeo Power with a degree in chemical engineering, and that's it. And battery manufacturing is primarily electrical and mechanical. And I communicated that in my interview. And I think Cam, who's my boss, really appreciated that I was so transparent about my desire to learn and grow. And I think that's honestly what got me this position, because it's not like I came in with a bunch of years of project management experience. So I think a hurdle or something to think about is figuring out your roadmap for your career. What do you want to learn? What position do you want to be in? And being confident enough to vocalize that so you can get there.
That's very good, Meredith. Brianna, can I add something there? I think it would also be very useful to have a mentor who can help you, guide you, and even challenge you to some things that you are not comfortable doing. Sometimes you just need somebody to motivate you to get to the next level.
Thank you. Those are all really great answers. Okay, I think we've actually run through all of our questions. So we will end, I think, a little bit early today, but thank you all so much for your questions. Those were really, really good. Rosie, could you pull up the last slide that has the thank you and the information for the next session, please? Okay, yes, thank you. Perfect. Well, thank you all again so much for joining. I have had the pleasure of helping with this conference again this year, and this is a really, really great session for anyone who wants to learn more about clean energy. As a reminder, we do have 2 more sessions this week, so tomorrow and Thursday, same time, but just different topics. So you can register. I will put the link in the chat right now, but you can register for those on our website. It's pretty easy. Let me put that in the chat so you have it. But again, it'll be about regulation and policy tomorrow on Wednesday, and then Thursday, energy justice and social impact. And with that, I think we will wrap up, but thank you to all of our panelists and speakers tonight. We really appreciate your time and being with us this evening, speaking about such great topics and inspiring the next generation of leaders. And thank you to all the attendees for joining. We love to see as many people as possible online and kind of sharing this passion with us. So again, please register for the next couple sessions, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.